Florida State adds a commitment from the class of 26 and more transfer portal news.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst and writer. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel because new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com to get started. Three things for you today that are going to highlight this show. At the end, I've got three questions, actually. If you were managing Florida State's NIL money and how they went after players, the types, we're going to discuss that within those three questions. We're also going to highlight two guys finishing up official visits to Florida State from the transfer portal, both big-time offensive line possibilities. But first, the Noles add a 2026 commitment, Xavier Payne, out of Jones High School in Orlando, Florida, 6'7", 314 pounds. He had offers from programs like Ole Miss, Arkansas, Florida, Tennessee, and Miami. This is a prominent program that he's coming from too. Jones, for those of you who don't know, it's one of the better programs in the state of Florida. They were just came in second overall in their division, made the state title game, and they quite frankly play a really good schedule. So it was a little bit easier for me to go in and look at some of his film. Didn't take long because he's going against pretty good athletes. Xavier Payne, again, looking at the film, I don't know if he's 6'7", but I would say he's at least 6'6". That's my guess. And he is a massive young man. He played left tackle for Jones this season. Do I think he's currently set to be a left tackle at the major P4 level? Not necessarily, but he's only a junior in high school. I need to see another year like most kids. It's really, really rare to see a kid that you just, no doubt about it, he's a left tackle and he's 16, 17 years old. That's not normal, but he has good power. He has the ability to hit a guy. If he kind of initially tries to swat at a guy and hit him on a pass rush, when he does, he got some pretty heavy hands. He'll knock guys off balance. And when he's run blocking, Payne is a kid that will try to bury somebody. Do I want to see more flexibility, more confidence in the way he pass sets? Of course. But that stuff takes forever. It is a lifelong learning skill on how to pass protect because you're going backwards and the defender is going forward. That is never an easy thing to do. But Florida State, again, when Florida, Miami, Tennessee, Arkansas, Ole Miss, and all these other programs go after a kid, he comes from Jones, and it's a program that Herb Hand, you got to remember now, the offensive line coach for the Noles, he just came from UCF. It's in Orlando, right down the road from Jones High School. It's probably 25 minutes away. There's no reason to think, even remotely, that Herb Hand wasn't going to go after some of these Orlando kids anyway. Gus knows him. So this is a good sign. It's the first guy reportedly that Coach Hand really went after and offered since he's been at Florida State. That's also important. And to that point, just want to add on to Xavier Payne picking the Seminoles. This weekend, they were supposed to have some guys on campus, several, in fact, Payne being one of them. There were other offensive linemen, several other underclassmen, class of 26 and 27, which would be rising juniors. It is imperative that Florida State finds a way to start being not just good, but dominant within their own state borders at recruiting the prep ranks. If you look at Texas, if you look at Notre Dame, Ohio State, most of the schools in the playoff, you can look at their roster and they got portal guys across the board. But especially at offensive line, the vast majority of the teams that are competing in the playoff that just kicked the crap out of the four teams that played, they recruited not just high school players, but high-end offensive linemen from the prep ranks. There is no shortcut here. Time and development. Hand's a really good coach anyway, but if you get those kind of players with Herb, things will work out pretty well for the Noles. Speaking of which, Florida State is not in a position, obviously, being very, very kind, to jump into just playing a bunch of freshmen in 2026 or 2025 for that matter. They're going to have to use the portal a bunch, and we've talked about this. There are two guys finishing up visits to Florida State and maybe this will be the last year they really have to jump in and do this. But there are two guys finishing visits that I think are interesting. I'm going to talk a little bit about both of them. And it's unique to me because neither one played at a prominent program. One is at a G5 school, elite academic institution. It's Rice, which is down in Houston. It's kind of like an Ivy League school or a Stanford or Notre Dame or Duke, what have you. And then the other kid is at Central Connecticut State. I knew that school's name because they, if I remember right, they played in the NCAA tournament or something like that before. But whatever the case is, there's a kid from there. And that's where we're going to start. Ratrell Perry, I think I'm pronouncing his first name right, Rahtrel, Central Connecticut State, 6'5", 305 pounds. We're going to talk about him and what he could bring, because this is a guy that, even though he's massive, I'm just going to bring this up, and it's part of my 3 questions at the end of the show too. How do you evaluate a young man when he's played at a lower level, but it's at a critical spot like offensive tackle? I don't even care if it's right or left. Offensive tackle is hard. You're not seeing him consistently go against guys that are on the same level that Florida State plays. It's not like NC State or Louisville or Miami or Notre Dame, something like that. Teams that consistently have guys go to the combine along the defensive line and a linebacker. So with that being stated, I'm going to share my screen for those of you that are on the YouTube channel, and then I will discuss all the numbers and statistics that are of particular importance for everybody else. Perry is massive. Again, he's 6'5", 305 pounds, so he's not going to have to like add size because he's coming from a smaller level. But his grades are pretty straightforward here. Offensively, 62.4 this year, 61.1 as a run blocker, and pass protection, 65.3. So he's a little bit over average, but I always look towards the end of the season. How do you finish? In games 5, or excuse me, the last 5 games of the season. Okay, now he's playing teams like Wagner, Robert Morrison. They're not great, but 84.2, 84, 74.1, 74.1 again. He had some pretty good grades in pass protection. And I look at that first for a lower level guy, because sometimes you'll go up against a kid that's like 6'3", 210 or something at those levels. The only prayer they have is to speed rush. So he did okay, especially towards the end of the season. He started pretty poor. He was in the 50s with his pass blocking grade against Central Michigan and Fordham. That ain't going to get you to the P4 level like Florida State. But this is a guy that's getting recruited by several different teams. And again, you can't teach size, 6'5", 305. And every game he played this year, he started at left tackle. So that's pretty interesting to me. If you go in and you look at the overall statistics, a couple other notes, he had 11 hurries, and he also gave up 4 sacks. He didn't finish strong necessarily in that regard because he gave up 3 sacks, 1 in each of the final 3 contests. But overall, he did good. So he probably went against pretty good competition. Rhode Island's the last team they played. They've always had historically a pretty good football program at that level. It's FCS. So that's one guy that Florida State's finishing up a visit with. And then the other one is also a guy that's pretty darn good. So let's share the screen yet again. And this player is, I'm hopefully going to pronounce this right, Ethan Onyenwa. He's a guy from Rice. And to be honest with you, Rice, again, is one of the most elite academic institutions in America, but it is not known for its football prowess. And this kid is beyond that. Like, he's 6'6", 345, according to Pro Football Focus. And although he didn't play a complete season this past year, he played in enough, 9 games, to kind of get an idea what he's capable of. And he played in over 500 snaps still. So to that point, looking at Perry, he played 901 snaps. So he's got plenty of experience at left tackle. This young man played left tackle as well. Grades, 74.3 for offense, run blocking, 67.9, and pass protection. This is where he excelled, and we're going to delve into this quite a bit. 78.7. Now, if you look at the teams, you're like, nothing great here. Best teams, Memphis. That's a good football team. UConn, whatever, they're okay. Houston had its moments. But against Houston, he had a pass protection grade of 86.5. Against UConn, 79.7. Against Memphis, 70.2. So usually guys that are pushing 350, and again, Onyenwa, I think that's how you pronounce it, 6'6", 345. That's a big dude. That is a really really big dude. To that end, Florida State is competing with some really big-time programs for this kid. He's from Texas, but Ohio State really wants him. And if you follow recruiting or know anything about recruiting analysts around the country, very, very few have the same kind of contacts that Bill Kurelic does, and he's covered Ohio State for over 30 years. On his board, he's got this kid number 1 overall for Ohio State. So that tells me something. Bill's might as well be sitting in Ryan Day's office. He's really, really well connected. And this kid also has an offer from A&M, and that's the place he just came from prior to visiting Florida State. Now, 2 points here. A&M and Ohio State both have a ton of NIL money. To that end, just as a point, what kind of money the school has, because it is an oil school. A&M's endowment, last I heard about a year ago, $18 billion. So I don't know how much is going to go towards being a football program's money out of that, but they've got donors everywhere. Well, again, we're going to talk about it in the final segment, but Florida State's got a really unique situation here competing for some of these guys. And that's really interesting to me. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what it means to get an offensive tackle, some of the guys Florida State has, and then we'll get into those 3 questions. That's next on Locked On Seminoles. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps you lower your bills, and helps you grow your saving. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit for this next year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For anybody out there, you probably have a subscription to something that you don't even notice it's going on your debit card. So Rocket Money can definitely help you. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Florida State has a couple of guys committed already from the portal along the offensive line. They just got Medley, the young man out of UCF. Adrian Medley played guard. And they'd already gotten Gunnar Hansen, the left tackle, from none other than Vanderbilt, the team that was kind of the upstart and made its way through the SEC and beat a team by the name of Alabama last year. So with that being stated, Florida State, would they be particular? Are they going to spend more money? There's so many really unique questions to ask about how they're going to approach the portal. But before I delve into that, just a key point here. I still think 5 is the minimum they need to take. I'd prefer 6 out of the portal. This is a very rare year because they've lost key guys, even though their O-line wasn't good. They really got to, I hate saying overspend, but they're probably going to have to in some capacity. And again, we'll get to that in the 3rd segment of the show. But does Florida State go all in? The 2 young men I just talked about, Onyenwa and Perry, those are big guys with experience. One's FCS, one's G5. How much do you delve into that? I don't know. But here's what I do believe is best for Florida State. Before the portal ends, in terms of the visits and all that stuff, like, for instance, there's different segments to this. Today's the last day you can take visits during December. So the visits for the 2 young men, Onyenwa and Perry, are going to conclude today in Tallahassee. But to enter your name into the portal, it's not till towards the end of the month. It's about a week from now. I don't know why it's that way. I guess it's just because of Christmas. They don't want people to be forced over the holiday, whatever the case may be. That being stated, Florida State, in my opinion, by the time we get to say the 5th, the 10th, somewhere through that range in January, at minimum, they need at least 1 more offensive lineman to be in the fold. Keep in mind, the spring transfer portal window will take place after spring ball. So whether it's Florida State or anybody else in college football, you still have time to add. Florida State could get a commitment from a kid. And I don't even know what the portal windows are for visits once January gets here. It'll probably open back up. But they have a chance to add throughout the spring. So don't panic if there's only like 1 more guy between now and, say, mid-January. There's plenty of time. So with that in mind, Florida State is sitting at 2. They've got 2 key guys on campus. There are a couple other guys that are probably going to hit the portal. And here's a theme. Remember, it's a little different because of the college football playoff being expanded. For any team last year, it's somewhat similar. When your season ended, if it was after the portal window, meaning after your bowl game, those teams, whatever day it was per team, you had an additional 5 days to enter the portal if you're on one of those rosters. Well, it's similar this year, but it extends the playoffs. So let's say whoever ends up in the final. I don't know who it will be, but whatever teams go to the final, 5 days after the championship game, that's when their portal window ends too. So there's going to be some new names coming. And we're going to talk about that next on Locked On Seminoles because you have some big decisions to make if you're Malzahn, if you're hurt hand, and really just everybody helping manage the NIL with this. Do you take the bird in hand? Do you go with guys that you think are going to enter the portal? Lots of questions discussed next here on Locked On Seminoles. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has many ways for you to pick up a win by betting on which players will score a touchdown, so you can do player props, and also how many points a team will score. It's an easy way to have some fun and to mix up how you place your bets. So, which players score a touchdown, how many yards a team score, or how many yards a team will get, lots of ways to do it. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. I promised you 3 questions, and I've hinted at them throughout the show, and I think these are very, very important. As we get to the point now, like Tennessee, just as an example, they got obliterated by Ohio State yesterday. I even posted this on X. How many Tennessee players are going to hit the portal? There's something wrong there. Like they didn't show up for a playoff game. They were down 21-0 before you could say hello. Does Florida State and their brass wait on a few more teams to be out? Like the next wave of games is like a week from Tuesday. That's something to think about. So there's a lot of things here to kind of go over, but here are my 3 questions. Number 1, as it has been brought up with a guy like Onyenwere, Ohio State, Texas A&M, and many other prominent teams are going after him. Do you go all in because he can play left tackle? He's proven to play left tackle. Or do you hold back a little bit because, again, you need, I think, at least 5 offensive linemen? How do you sort your money on that now that you have 2 in the boat? They've already got one guy that can play tackle, Hansen. If you think, if you're Herb Hand and the rest of the offensive staff, you're like, he could be our left tackle next year. Do you offer as much? How much do you go up to? What are some of the challenges? There's a lot of ways you could word it, but basically, do you go all in on another left tackle? It's a debatable question. Number 2, if Florida State lands Deuce Robinson, and that very well could happen, heck, he might have committed during the time I'm doing this podcast. It's so wild. Do the Noles go for 1, 2, or 3 more receivers? Double is, they need at least 2, even if Robinson's there. I'm steadfast with that. How many more would you take? And as an additional, if you want to answer it this way, do you go after another real high-end guy? Do you want any younger players? How do you want to do it? Answer on the Locked On YouTube page. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Finally, number 3, should Florida State just wait for, except for a few guys they know they really, really want? Should they wait for at least the next wave of college football playoff games to be done? Because the teams that lose, I'm telling you, you're going to see a lot of Tennessee players about to hit the portal. Whoever loses in the next round, think about it. Georgia plays Notre Dame. Those are 2 pretty good rosters. Whoever loses, that's a lot of good players. You're going to have a great game between Oregon and Ohio State. Some players are going to leave. There are a lot of different opportunities. So if you were somebody in any way, shape, or form connected to the Florida State NIL, Battle's End, whatever it is, would you go and wait, or would you just go all in right now on what you can? From the old saying, rather have a bird in hand than two in the bush. It's a lot of really interesting stuff to think about because I honestly don't think there's a great answer to that because you don't know necessarily exactly who's going to get in, even if you've had some kind of contact with somebody, because they can change their mind. It is fascinating to me, and this is why the transfer portal is not only important for Florida State, but every team. One misstep, and it can go sideways. So again, I'll just read the questions again for those of you who are curious. Will Florida State compete with the Ohio States, Texas A&Ms? Michigan's obviously spending a ton of money now. Even Notre Dame's getting more into it. Florida's NIL is really good because they had the buyout set up for Billy. They're using that money instead of firing him for NIL. There are a lot of questions. 2, if they get Deuce Robinson, how many more receivers should they get? And then 3, do you wait on some more teams to lose in the playoff to truly go all in with your NIL and the transfer portal? Or do you take what you know right now and just move forward as it unfolds and let the chips fall where they may? Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. We're going to have more transfer portal news coming up very soon. I expect 1 or 2 more commitments before Tuesday. I like where they sit with Deuce Robinson from everything that's been heard, but who knows? That could change. And several other players are just finishing up visits. So make sure you come back very soon to check out Locked On Seminoles and take it wherever you go. Download it, Apple, Spotify, whichever app you want. You can take it with you to the gym or anywhere else you go. Everybody have a good one. Take care.